Hello, good morning. Welcome back to Appreciating Literature. Today we have the continuation of one act play, The Monkey's Paw. The second part. We will be having one more class on that, where we will be dealing with the author and the analysis of the story. So now let us go to the second part. Scene 2. The next afternoon. The sun shines into the living room. Mr. and Mrs. White are drinking tea and sorting through the day's mail. The paw lies on a shelf, ignored. So, in the previous class, we saw that Mr. White had taken that monkey's paw in his hand and wished for £200. And of course nothing happened, so they are going to bed. So this is the next day. Mrs. White, plenty of bills so far, but no check for £200. So now they are going through the mail and a lot of bills had come, but she is reminding him about the wish, and there is no check for £200. That's what she means. I suppose Herbert will have more of his funny remarks for you when he gets home from the factory. So the mother is telling the father that when the son comes back, he will make fun of you. He will have more of funny remarks on that monkey's paw. Mr. White, I am sure he will, but the thing moved in my hand. I would swear to that. So, of course, he is expecting the same from his son, but then he is trying to reaffirm the fact that the monkey's paw had moved in his hand while he was wishing. Mrs. White, soothingly, you thought it did. So, she is not able to believe that. So, she thinks it is all his imagination. Mr. White, it did. There was no thought about it. So he is standing firmly on that position that it really moved in his hand. I had just, what is it? Suddenly he is hearing some sound. Mrs. White is looking past him out the window, outside. Mrs. White, there is somebody outside, a man in a business suit. I never seen him before. He is acting very strange, as if he can't decide whether to open the gate or not. Here he comes up the path now. So suddenly they see a stranger coming up, standing near the gate, and he is unsure, not sure whether to open the gate and come inside. Anyway, he is now opening the gate and then coming towards the house. There is a knock at the door and Mrs. White goes to let the stranger in. Inside, the stranger stands silently for a moment, looking uncomfortable. So the stranger has come inside the house and he is standing silently. He is not talking anything, and definitely he is not feeling very comfortable. He is feeling uneasy. Stranger, I was asked to come see you. I come from Moore and Meggins. So he is an employee of that company, Moore and Meggins. So the Moore and Meggins company, there is a factory or a company for which their son Herbert was working. Mrs. White, alarmed, shocked. Is anything wrong? Has something happened to Herbert? What is it? What is it? So now the mother, Mrs. White, is very anxious about the safety of her son, Herbert. So she is asking, has anything happened to him? What did really happen? Mr. White, now calm down. No point jumping to conclusion. So he is telling, don't worry about him, don't think about unnecessary things and all that. Looking hopefully at the stranger. I am sure our visitor hasn't brought us any bad news. So he is hoping that this man has not brought any bad news. Stranger, I am sorry. That means he has some bad news. Mrs. White, frantic. Frantic means she is very tensed. Panic. Is he hurt? Has anything happened to him? The stranger nods. Yes, he says yes, something has happened to him. He is hurt, badly hurt, but he is not in any pain. That means he doesn't feel any pain. So it can have different meanings here. Mrs. White, oh thank goodness for that. So suddenly she realizes something. She breaks off, suddenly understanding, and stares at the stranger in growing horror. So now only she understood what he meant by the phrase, he is not in any pain. The stranger looks at the floor. Mrs. White turns to her husband and takes his hand. There is a long pause. She understood the son is gone. That means something has happened to their son. Stranger, in a low voice. He was caught in the machinery. That means a factory where he is working. So he was caught in that, and that's what happened to him. Mr. White, dazed means shocked. Caught in the machinery, yes. He squeezes his wife's hand and stares blankly out the window, then turns to the stranger. So Mr. White understood that the son is no more. Mr. White, he was our only child, it is hard. So they don't have any other children. He was the only son. So it is very hard for them to bear that loss. Stranger, clearing his throat. The company wants me to convey their sincere sympathy with you in your great loss. So he is conveying the sympathy of the company on their loss. I hope you understand that I am just doing my job. Yes, though it is painful, I have come to do my job. Pauses. I am supposed to tell you that Mo and Megan's disclaim all responsibility. So the company for which he had been working, so they don't admit any responsibility for that accident. They admit no liability, but in consideration of your son's work, they would like to give you a certain sum of compensation. So they are not responsible, they are no liability. Anyway, considering your son's work, they are going to give you an amount as compensation. Mr. White, barely able to speak. A certain sum, how much? Stranger, 200 pounds. So Mrs. White screams. Mr. White holds out his hands and falls to the ground to the floor in a faint. So when the stranger told them that the amount is 200 pounds, you find the reaction. Mrs. White is screaming loudly, and Mr. White is almost fainting and falling to the floor. Of course, the reason is that they had wished for 200 pounds and they never imagined that they would get the amount this way after losing the son. So they had to pay a very heavy price for what they wished for. Scene 3. Night time. A week and a half later. So now after the accident and death, nearly 10 days have passed, and it is night time. Mrs. White stands in the doorway, weeping as she looks out into the darkness. So Mrs. White is still mourning. She is crying for the lost son. Mr. White comes downstairs. He goes to her and closes the door, then puts his arms around her. So he is trying to console her. Mr. White gently, come back to bed. It is cold out there tonight. Mrs. White, it is colder for my son. She sobs. Suddenly she straightens and turns, clutching her husband's arms. So she is still thinking about her son and tells that he is very cold. Suddenly she is holding the husband's hands as though she got some idea. Mrs. White, wildly, the paw, the monkey's paw. That means she has got some idea about the monkey's paw, that she is able to do something. Mr. White, what? Where? Mrs. White, I want it. You didn't get rid of it, did you? Did you throw it away? Mr. White, it's upstairs, I think. Why? Of course, he has not thrown it out. It is still there upstairs. Mrs. White, crying and laughing hysterically. So she is gone out of her mind almost. Uncontrollably, she is laughing and crying at the same time. I only just thought of it. Why didn't I think of it before? Why didn't you think of it? So she is asking her husband, why is that you didn't think about it? Mr. White, think of what? Mrs. White, the other two wishes, we have only had one. So they had only one wish which was fulfilled. They are asking for 200 pounds and they got it. Now they have got two more wishes. So she is trying to make use of that. Mrs. White, the other two wishes, we have only had one. Yes. Mr. White, fiercely. Fiercely means angrily. Wasn't that enough? Of course. The one wish, how they got it, how it was fulfilled, they know. At a very high cost, they had to pray. They had to lose their son. So he is thinking that if they are wishing for more, the consequence will be more terrible. That's why he is not in favor of wishing again. Mrs. White, no, we will have one more. Go get it down and wish our boy alive again. So she is trying to force the husband to wish a second time and bring back the dead son. Mr. White, stepping back in horror, you are insane, you are mad. Mrs. White, I want my son back. I want to see my son. So she is very adamant. She is very obstinate about that. She wants her son back anyhow. Mr. White, you don't know what you are saying. So he is aware of what may happen in case the son is coming back. Mrs. White, we had the first wish granted. Why not the second? Yes, we have already proved the magic power of that monkey's paw. So it will work. So why can't we try the second wish? Mr. White, it was a coincidence. It just happened like that. Mrs. White, go and get it and wish. So she has no time to argue. Somehow he wants the son back. So Mr. White, facing her and taking her by the arms, he has been dead 10 days, and besides, I didn't want to tell you this, but I could only recognize him by his clothes. That means the dead body, it was so badly injured, mangled. They were not able to recognize him only by his clothes. He was mangled. Mangled means injured and beyond any recognition. You can't recognize that person. He was mangled in the machinery. If he was too terrible for you to see then, how would it be now? So if he comes back in that shape, it will be horrible. That's why he doesn't want to take that risk. Mangled means chatanyarnya. Mrs. White, bring him back. Do you think I would fear my own son? So she is in no mood to listen to the explanation given by Mr. White. She wants him back, that's all. Mr. White goes slowly upstairs, followed by his wife. he takes the paw and stares at it. So because of the force and pressure from his wife, he is trying for the second wish. Mrs. White, wish, Mr. White weakly, but he is not willing to do that. It is foolish and wicked, so it is insane according to him, wishing this son back. Mrs. White, wish, so she is forcing him to do that. Mr. White, holding up the paw, I wish my son alive again. So he is doing that wish out of the force from his wife. So he drops the paw and sinks trembling into a chair. So he knows that he has done something that he should not have done. So he is collapsing into the chair. Mrs. White runs to the window and stands looking out. So she is waiting for her son to come back. The clock ticks. A stair creaks. A sound from the stair. Mrs. White comes and sits by her husband. Finally, a quiet knock is heard. Mrs. White jumps up. So suddenly they hear a knock on the door. So Mrs. White is jumping up. Mrs. White, what is that? Mr. White, shakily, a mouse, so it must be a rat. It's just a mouse in the wall. Another knock, louder this time. So they are hearing the knocking on the door. Mrs. White, it is Herbert, it is our son. So she is very sure that her son has come back. She starts toward the stairs, but Mr. White grabs her by the arm. So she is trying to go down and then open the door, but then her husband is preventing her, stopping her. Mr. White, what are you going to do? Mrs. White, it is Herbert. What are you holding me for? Let go so I can open the door. So she was very sure it is their son. So she is asking, why are you holding me? Let me go so that I can go and open the door for him. Mr. White, hoarsely means roughly, don't let it in. So see the word he using, it. That means he knows that it is a dead body coming back. It won't be the original shape as before the accident. So it must be horrible, like a zombie, all mangled, and it will be shocking to see him in that shape. That's why he is telling, don't let it in. Mrs. White, how can you be afraid of your son? Let me go. So it is our own son. How can you be afraid? Let me go. The knocking is louder and louder. She breaks free and runs down to the door. Mrs. White, I am here, Herbert. I am right here. So she is going down and opening the door, telling, I am here, Herbert. I am here. As she struggles with the lock, trying to open the door, Mr. White falls to his knees. He picks up the monkey's paw from the floor and holds it up in his right hand. His lips move, but we can't hear him over the thunderous knocking. He drops the paw. That means he took the monkey's paw in his hand, and then he wished for something. We don't know what he wished for, because there was a lot of knocking and sound outside. So we can only see him moving his lips. And after wishing, he is dropping the paw down. At once the knocking stops and the door springs open. So as soon as he dropped the paw after wishing, that is the third wish. The knocking stops, and then Mrs. White was trying to open the door, and she opens it now. There is a pause, and then a long loud wail from Mrs. White. Wail means cry. Beyond her, the road is empty. So Mrs. White is looking out and then crying, and she is not able to see anybody there. So that's the end of the one act play. Now let us look at the theme, the monkey's paw themes. First one is of course superstition, as we are already seen in the Kushan Singh, Mark of Vishnu, and also Nisim Ezekiel's Night of the Scorpion. All these have the same theme running through, that is superstition. The story never explicitly states that the paw was the reason for Herbert's death, nor does it reveal whether the mysterious knocker at the White's home is in fact an undead Herbert. So there's a lot of suspense. We don't know what exactly happened there. We don't know whether the monkey's paw really has that magical power, or everything is left to the imagination of the reader. We don't know whether the knock at the end was really from the undead Herbert. Undead means he has come back from the dead, but he is not actually the original person he was. Both events could be a coincidence. It could have happened by chance like that. The money could have simply happened to be the amount they wished for. The knocking could be a stranger, animals, a trick of nature, etc. So all these things are beyond proving. We can't prove all that. This uncertainty makes the reader question the nature of reality, leading them to believe in the supernatural rather than the logical. So after reading all that, we feel it is ultimately it is the power of the magic paw. So superstition is thus one of the most important forces in the short tale because of how it affects the reader. So after all the events, when we analyze, we tend to believe that yes, it could have been the magical power of the monkey's paw. Otherwise, there is no other possibility. And the second theme is definitely the greed. The Whites are content, happy family. So the whole family was happy, satisfied with what they had. They want for nothing, as Mr. White mentions when he thinks of what to make as his first wish. So when he was trying for the first wish, he was not able to find what to do because he feels he had everything. So he wishes out of greed, not out of necessity. So the 200 pounds that he wished for was not actually his necessity, it was greed. They face the consequences of upsetting an equilibrium and asking for too much. Yes. So this is what happens when we are too ambitious or when we are too greedy. We are upsetting the equilibrium that was already there. It is especially telling that Herbert, the one who wants wealth and fame the most, is the one taken by death. So he was the one who was greedy. He was the one who wanted his father to become emperor, and wants to get rid of the law and all that. So ultimately, he was the one who was forcing everybody to wish for, and he was the one who was taken by the death. Even the second wish is selfish and not rational. It is purely driven by emotion and what Mrs. White wants. So definitely the second wish, that is to bring back the dead son, was purely out of emotion. It was not a rational decision, and Mr. White was definitely against it. This greed leads to disappointment and the downfall of the Whites. So the ruin of the White family is only because of this greed. Greed and lust for something one doesn't need can lead to tragic consequences. So that is what is the lesson that we learn from this one act play. Too much greed can ruin us. A third topic is interfering with fate or our destiny. The story's main character, an elderly man named Mr. White, is told of a monkey's paw that has the power to grant 3 wishes. Despite being warned about the mysterious talisman, he learns that it had a spell put on it by a fakir, a holy man from India, who wanted people to understand the dangers of interfering with fate. He takes the paw and wishes for money. So it was clearly told to Mr. White that this monkey's paw has got dangerous consequences, because it was meant to teach a lesson, and you are playing with fire. That's what Mr. Morris had told them. But then they don't care about all that. Fourth one is dangers of wish fulfillment. Reminiscent of the biblical story of Adam and Eve, the monkey's paw reminds readers to be careful what they wish for. So reminiscent means reminding us. Anusmarippikkunna. So biblical story of Adam and Eve is that God had warned both of them that if they eat of that tree, it will be dangerous. It is a sin. But then they go against the command of God and face the consequences. That is it. So we should be very careful what we are wishing for. The White's downfall comes as the result of wishing for more than what they actually needed. Even though Mr. White feels content with his life, he was a happy family, a comfortable home, and plenty of love, he still uses the monkey's paw to wish for money that he doesn't really need. So this is the danger when we are trying to accumulate more wealth than what we really need. We know that recently, people commit suicide. Not only the poor people, even the rich, they commit suicide at the end, because in their quest for wealth, they forget their family, they forget morals, everything. So at the end, they will die. So this is what happens to people who are running after wealth, money and all that. This wish comes true at a steep cost. So they had to pay a high price for their wish. It also results in Mrs. White having complete faith in the paw and wishing for something with greater stakes. So once their first wish was granted, in spite of the loss of their son, you find this Mrs. White is taking the risk once again to bring back the son. This wish too leads to unhappiness. So even the second wish cannot make them happy. The author skillfully illustrates the dangers of wishes which can come true in unexpected ways. So through this story, the author is trying to tell us that whenever we are trying to fulfill all our wishes, there are also dangers hiding, especially if the wishes are not justified. His son then dies in an accident and the family is given the money they wished for. This event emphasizes the story's theme, which is that interfering with fate, especially when driven by greed, leads to tragedy. So we cannot or we should not try to change our fate. We should accept that. And if we take shortcuts sometimes, it can be fatal. The tale continues with the fulfillment of 2 additional wishes due to the supernatural force of the monkey's paw. So we can reasonably believe that the third wish also was granted to Mr. White. Of course, he must have wished for the son to die once again, right? Yes. So at the end, we are very confused whether to believe in the supernatural power of the monkey's paw or not. And that is the success of this story. The author somehow forces us to believe in the power of the supernatural, the monkey's paw. So, with that, we come to the end of this lesson. In the next lesson, we will be dealing with the author and also the analysis of the poem. Until then, it is goodbye. Thank you.